In fact, up 0.4% for the week. Let's pull up the BSE 500, some names. You'll see some earnings candidates. Mazagon Dock up on the back of stock split announcement. Axis Bank doing very well. Z also doing well on the back of numbers. Manappuram, of course, the embargo creating a bit of a drag. IGL, MGL on the back of the announcement with regard to APM. You have LTI Mindtree on the back of numbers, Zomato on the back of QIP, Infosys on the back of numbers. So a majority of them on the back of announcements, but big movers both sides.
Well, the second half of FY25 is expected to be relatively weaker. That's the word coming in from Sandeep Tandon, MD and CEO of Quant Capital. Now, here's him sharing his insights on what this means for the market.
As of now, if you ask me, the market has potential to correct and consolidate more before you see a sharp reversal in the market. But India macro, on absolute basis, I can say yes. It is expected that second half of 2024 will be relatively weak. But as we cross now the second half, maybe we enter into 25 or 25-26 cycle, then people start looking 2 years forward. Then market becomes again attractive. It's not be that expensive as we was looking at because we were slowed down in the earning this year. But what is very important for us to understand that is that for a longer term perspective, medium-term perspective, India is very constructive. So one should look for a buying opportunity rather than for any retail investor or any masses type of people whom I'm referring. Definitely is a buying opportunity which will emerge if any meaningful correction happen, and nobody can really pinpoint. I can only say that it's a risk-off period for us, and risk-off period we always play on back foot. Play through large cap names, play through liquid names rather than playing through illiquid route, which has been working very well for last many years.
And we also spoke to Manav Chopra, who believes that NBFCs will continue to underperform and prefers private banks in the near term.
See, the PSU banks has already been correcting since last 4 months. We have seen that phase of correction which have already played out. You might see a bit of more knee-jerk coming in because of the market volatility. But my sense is in this market scenario, the NBFCs are usually the which witnesses more hit. Names like Piramal Enterprises, which have been consolidating, has started to dip lower. The L&T Finance. These are the pockets which could see some more pain coming in going forward. But the PSUs in general, I think the first phase of decline is almost over. You might see another dip, but not like a larger one at the moment. So within the financials, I think the way the Bank Nifty has declined, there might be certain pockets where you might see a little bit of pain, but largely I think it's only the private banks, including with insurance, which could be the savior for the space. But largely NBFCs might see some bit of an underperformance going forward. So I have a neutral bias in financials, not very bullish in general, but I would prefer private banks just for the near-term perspective.
Now, foreign investors have sold over 71,000 crore rupees in October, but what are the buying and selling the most? Now, Chinmay joins us with an interesting piece of analysis.
The FI selling so far this month has been the largest ever seen by Indian equities at 71,000 crores. This even crosses the figure that was seen during the COVID lows at the end of March 2020. The FII outflow stood at 62,400 odd crores. Now, for the full stretch where FPIs have been selling so far, it's been 14 sessions. FPIs have sold around 77,000 odd crores in Indian equities. During this time, it's DIs who have been buying at 75,000 crore worth of inflows. Now, a notable point there is mutual fund flows, which make up for a considerable amount of the inflows made by DIIs. As of September 30th, active equity schemes were sitting on a cash pile of 1.49 lakh crores. Now, when we look at what sectors FAIs have been selling in so far and buying in, first we have chemicals, where they've been buying about 500 odd crores worth of equities in October so far, followed by metals and mining stocks, and then utilities at 120 odd crores. For the sectors where there have been sellers, financial services comes up at the top, around 23,000 odd crores of selling, followed by oil and gas and consumable fuels, 12,300 odd crores sold, then automobiles and auto components, FMCG companies and consumer services.
Well, shares of Manappuram Finance hit its lowest level since November of 2023 after the RBI on late Thursday banned its subsidiary Ashirwad Microfinance and 3 other NBFCs from sanctioning and disbursing of loans. We have Subhana Sheikh joining us with more details. Hi, Subhana. Shares, of course, of Manappuram took quite a hit today. We're down about 15% at one point.
Yes. Shares of Manappuram Finance actually ended 13% lower, but it hit its lowest level since November 2023. Now, this is because its arm Ashirwad Microfinance was banned by the RBI from sanctioning loans and disbursing its loans from Monday. Now, this was largely because a lot of these NBFCs, were using high lending rates, weighted average lending rates, and interest spreads, over their cost of funds. This is why they came under the RBI scrutiny. And the RBI also, Ashirwad Finance actually, accounts for 27% of the consolidated AUM of Manappuram Finance, which directly hits Manappuram Finance's earnings. And, post this development, a lot of brokerages actually, downgraded the stock and cut its target price, expecting a hit on the gold financiers' earnings going forward. Analysts are also expecting the stock to continue to underperform unless the RBI's ban is not revoked. So yes, that's on Manappuram Finance.
Thank you very much, Subhana, for joining us on that. Well, moving on, China's economic expansion slowed in the third quarter despite tentative signs of improvement last month. As per Bloomberg reports, Q3 GDP has shown a growth of 4.6% year-on-year, surpassing the estimate of 4.5%. While the retail sales in September have increased, in fact, by 3.2% year-on-year. Now, for the period from January to September, GDP growth stands at 4.8%, which is slightly below the expected 4.9%. Meanwhile, on the other side, China's industrial output for September recorded a growth of 5.4%, outpacing the expected increase of 4.6%. Well, Polycab slumped after reporting its Q2 earnings, but what are the factors that have impacted the results? Mahima joins us to take us through what's hurting the stock.
Polycab stock tanked almost to 7%, but the stock has recovered since then. Now, a couple of reasons why the stock has recovered is because of the commentary that the management has given. But first, we'll discuss as to what has happened with Q2 results of Polycab. Well, revenue did grow around 30%, but EBITDA and net profit grew around 3%, but margins have taken a significant hit from 14.4% mark to 11.5% mark. Now, a couple of reasons why margins have contracted. One, higher mix of B2B and institutional sales, as well as lower mix of export, and management has said that they continue to invest in brand building, which is why the cost is going up and it's impacting margins. And lastly, intense competition is also hurting margins. Now, in terms of margin history, FY24 they've stood at around 14%, FY23 they stood at around 13%, but FY22 they stood around 10 to 12%, which is where the margins have gone back to in Q2 FY25. In terms of exports, it's their highest margin segment, but the revenues for exports have come down by 29% YOY, and overall exports as a percentage of revenue have gone to 6% versus that of 9% in Q2 FY24. But there is some positivity in the result as well, where revenues grew by 30%, cables and wires grew by around 24% versus the 5-year CAGR of 20%, and brokerages too are not very cautious on the stock. Jefferies has given a target price of 8315 retained buy, and they've made minor cuts of EPS around 1 to 2%, and FY24 to 27 estimates suggest a PAT and sales CAGR of 22% and 21% respectively, and they've retained target with a PE of 42 times. The stock has, however, recovered because of management commentary that they gave in the con call. They've given a guidance of 20,000 crore of revenue in FY25. They've said that their ongoing projects will continue to drive demand for wires in the next few years, and the margins are expected to improve in second half, and they will come back between the 12 to 14%. So their margins have taken a hit, but the management commentary industry remains positive in terms of recovery in margins as well as their guidance of revenue of achieving 20,000 crore in terms of revenue, which is why the stock has recovered from its day's lows.
Well, a slew of banking majors have their earnings set to be released tomorrow. Subhana is joining us for more on this. So, Subhana, hi again. What's expected from HDFC Bank and Kotak Bank? Their earnings, of course, do come out tomorrow.
Yes, so HDFC Bank, we're expected to see a steady performance by HDFC Bank. Now, tomorrow's earnings is extremely important, the Q2 earnings, because it will complete 1 year of the merger between, its parent Housing Development Finance Corp and HDFC Bank. NI net interest income is expected to rise. Operating profit is expected to rise on a year-on-year basis. Margins provisions are supposed to rise slightly, but PAT is expected flat overall. Margins and asset quality of the bank is expected to be stable. Now the guidance for business growth will be in focus, and also the loan to deposit ratio. The loan to deposit ratio of the bank will be largely in focus, and also the bank's borrowing repayment plans. These will be largely in focus tomorrow. And as for Kotak Mahindra Bank's earnings are expected to see a lackluster performance for the Q2 this time because of the drag on its margins. The persistent decline in its margins and the rise in cost ratios are likely to see an impact on its earnings. While the net interest income of the bank and stable asset quality could help lift the PAT on a year-on-year basis, but high operating expenses and lower other income could lead to a fall in profit after tax on a sequential basis. And also the bank's the RBI's ban on Kotak Mahindra Bank's personal loans and its onboarding of new customers, the lift on that ban would also be washed out for, and the management's commentary on the same.
All right, Subhana, thank you very much for joining us on that. Now, moving on, FICCI is hosting the second edition of the Real Estate Investment Summit in Mumbai today, bringing together industry leaders to discuss innovative financing models and investment strategies in real estate. We caught up with Gaurav Pandey of Godrej Properties on the H1 FY25 pre-sales performance, while Anuj Puri of Anarok shared his outlook on the next quarter.
I think percentage, aside, because right now we're working on this particular financially, I think the market is very exciting. If you just try and see what is the overall residential real estate landscape in India, that Godrej Properties, despite being the number one developer in India, in most pan-India market share is still in single digits per se, low single digits. So I think there's a massive headroom to grow to begin with. Add to that, we're adding a lot of, as you would have noticed, we've added quite a few land parcels in the quarter, the last one that we've done, and I think this will fuel and propel our growth even stronger in the next year. Personally, I won't like to comment right now. Let's finish off this year and then try and see what kind of growth we can expect again next year.
So it is a good observation. What you say is that 11% demand year on year, which was from July, August, September of 23 to 24. In 24, we did see a 11% drop. There are 3 or 4 reasons for that. Is one, usually monsoons are a little bit soft. Second is that there was a bit of a overhang of the general elections that was there. Third is that the inauspicious period, which is the Shraddh period, also significantly came within the July, August, September quarter. As a result of which, we saw purposely supply being withheld by the developers.
Well, gold prices have surged to new record highs, with the spot price reaching around $2,720 per ounce. Now, this sharp rise is largely driven by uncertainty surrounding the world today, and Pallavi Nahata has more details on what's making gold shine brighter.
International gold prices continue to scale fresh highs. They've climbed to $2,714 an ounce. There continue to be multiple triggers for this. The first up, of course, is the uncertainty around the US elections as well as the ongoing war in the Middle East. As such, investors continue to turn to gold as a safe haven investment. Now, the December futures contract of gold has also touched fresh life highs of $2,729.3 $3 an ounce. Now, closer home in India, prices are currently trending closer to 77,580 per 10 grams. In case of 24 karat gold, prices are trending closer to the 78,900 mark. Now, we must remember that gold prices have remained elevated and above the 75,000 mark ever since the first week of October amid the festive season demand. As such, we have seen a little bit of hit on the demand for gold.
All right. Thank you for that, Pallavi. Now, the Supreme Court has dismissed a plea seeking the establishment of a regulatory board to monitor and manage OTT platforms. The court refused to hear the public interest litigation filed by Advocate Shashank Shekhar Jha. He had argued that while films released in theatres required certification from the censor board, there is no such regulation for OTT content, resulting in platforms being flooded with obscene material, some of which could pose a national security threat. In response to this plea, the Justices D.Y. Chandrachud and Manoj Mishra said that the issue lies with the quality of PILs and that only genuine PILs should be brought before the court. And there is big relief for the Isha Foundation and Sadhguru as the Supreme Court has dismissed proceedings in a case involving a father's claims that his two daughters had been brainwashed into joining spiritual leader's ashram in Tamil Nadu's Coimbatore. NDTV's Sunil Prabhu joins in with more details of what transpired.
Not exactly that. It's gone beyond that also. We'll have to look at it in its entirety. The Supreme Court entire bench heard those, because it was a habeas corpus petition, heard those two girls, daughters of the person who had filed the petition, and heard them out about their whereabouts in the last hearing. Then asked for a status report. The status report has come. The Supreme Court has perused that entire status report today. In the open court, certain parts were not openly discussed. For example, the cremation, the people missing, or for that matter, where there is, X-ray machines and everything else without permission, to which a pointed remark was given by the Supreme Court Justice Pardiwala, saying very categorically that nothing stops you from acting. We are only confining ourselves to the habeas corpus petition. Nobody stops the Tamil Nadu government from acting as is required. So it's in that backdrop, as an officer of the court, the counsel for Tamil Nadu explained to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court in its remarks has closed this entire petition, but has clearly allowed the government of the day, in this case the Tamil Nadu government, to do whatever is necessary if they have found any kind of violations.
Well, in fact, news just coming in, we are learning that Kotak Mahindra has come into a pact with Standard Chartered Bank in India for acquisition of its personal loan book. Vishwanath Nair and Subhana are both joining us for more on this. First to you, Vishy. Tell us more, please.
Right, Nupur. So the news that's coming in is on through an exchange notification. Kotak Mahindra Bank has alerted investors that it is looking to buy 4,100 crore worth of unsecured personal loans of a portfolio from Standard Chartered Bank. Now, as part of the statement, of course, Standard Chartered Bank has clarified that they want to focus more on wealth and other specialized premium retail products and SME loans as a way to grow their business. So obviously, the unsecured personal loan bit, probably that's not something that they were considering as part of their strategy. That will now move to Kotak Mahindra Bank, depending, of course, on regulatory approvals. This is important and interesting from a few points of view. Just a couple of years ago, Kotak Mahindra Bank was in the race to buy Citibank's personal and retail loan assets, which included the credit card portfolio, the other retail banking portfolio as well. Of course, Kotak Mahindra Bank eventually fell out of that race, and that asset, their entire portfolio, went to Axis Bank. Now, Kotak Mahindra Bank has completed its acquisition, or is looking to complete its acquisition of Standard Chartered Bank's unsecured retail portfolio. This is also important because this is the first such acquisition under Ashok Vaswani's leadership at Kotak Mahindra Bank. Also interesting because Kotak Mahindra Bank is going through a number of restrictions from the Reserve Bank of India, primarily on acquisition of customers online, as well as issuing fresh credit cards. So the bank was missing out on that credit card portfolio, which is a high yield product, which affects the margins for the bank. So by buying a 4,000 crore portfolio from Standard Chartered Bank, they will not only get a good base of good quality customers, but they will also get that high yield portfolio into their balance sheet. That is something that probably Kotak Mahindra Bank is looking at closely and is looking at as a way to sort of bolster its balance sheet.
So essentially, Vishy, obviously this is, a part of their growth strategy is what we understand.
Yes, so exactly that's what I was trying to say, that Kotak Mahindra Bank has had issues with the RBI. They've not been able to grow their loan book as much as they would have liked, primarily because they can't issue fresh credit cards. And that sort of gap in the portfolio, which has been there for the last few months, that gets covered because they are able to buy this 4,000 crore worth of book. I mean, relatively speaking, 4,000 crore is a small number, but it brings in a lot of interest income. Typically, unsecured personal loans are high interest rate loans, so that adds to the bank's earnings after this transaction.
All right, now Subhana, is there a time frame that we could be looking at for this to be completed? And obviously, it will have to undergo all those regulatory approvals as well.
Yes, you're right. I mean, right now, I don't think so there are any timelines in place. But tomorrow is Kotak Mahindra Bank's earnings, and these are the questions that would be put forth in front of the management, and clarity on these timelines and regulatory approvals on the same would we'd come to know tomorrow after the Kotak Mahindra Bank's earnings.
All right, Shabana as well as Vishy, thank you very much, both of you, for joining us and bringing us those details of this breaking news story. Well, moving on. The centre has planned to send 1,600 tons of onions to northern states ahead of the festive season, and tomato prices subsidised to 65 rupees a kg in a bid to ease the burden on consumers. NDTV's Shreya Ghosh brings you details.
Earlier this month, the price of tomatoes, which is an essential vegetable in the kitchen, was shot up to 100 to 120 rupees per kg across the capital and also in Mumbai because of the unseasonal rainfall leading to crop damage and pest infestation. Right now, the government has made the rate around 65 rupees per kg. Let's speak to the vendor himself. Bhaiya, abhi kitna ka बेच रहे हो?
70 रुपए किलो 70 रुपए किलो।
कब से 70 किलो का हो गया?
करीबन मैम 8 दिन हो गया।
8 दिन हो गया। और अक्टूबर के महीने में थोड़ा बिजनेस और
महंगा था मैम, बहुत महंगा था। पीछे बरसात हो रही थी इसलिए महंगा था।
और अभी नॉर्मल बिजनेस चल रहा है, अभी कोई दिक्कत नहीं है?
अभी तो मैम अभी तो बहुत मंदा है और आगे कुछ संभावना है कि और मंदा हो जाएगा।
और कम हो जाएगा।
और कम हो जाएगा।
और ये हर साल ऐसे होता है कि बहुत ज्यादा बढ़ जाता है टमाटो का प्राइस?
मैम ऐसा है, बाहर जो बारिशें होती हैं उसके लिए कि माल आगे नहीं आ पाता, महंगाई इसलिए हो जाती है। किसान अपनी मर्जी से बेचता है, फिर जब उसकी फसल खराब हो जाएगी तो वो अपनी मर्जी से तो बेचेगा दाम। बस ये फसल के ऊपर डिपेंड करता है और कोई बात नहीं है।
And in fact, do join us at 6 this evening on The Big Story as we have an in-depth discussion where we explore the impact of price hikes on household budgets and pressing concerns over price fluctuations. Well, that's all we have time for right now on Profit 360. Thank you for joining us. Yes. Hi Sachin, how are you?
Hi Nupur, I'm well. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. So we'll just come to you in a bit. Yeah. Basically, the findings of your survey, and I also want to touch a bit upon how high food inflation